Secretary of State, thank you so much for joining me. This will be your first International Women's Day in government. In your role as Minister for Women and Equalities, what are your most pressing priorities for women and girls?
Yes, thanks very much. International Women's Day is a great opportunity to celebrate the fantastic success of so many women across our country, but also to think about where we need further action. And our government's number one mission is economic growth. If we want to achieve that economic growth, we need much stronger support around women too, in order to make sure they can play their full contribution, because we know that, since 2000, 40% of economic growth has been driven by women. So there is a lot to be proud of, but so much more that we need to do.
There is a UN report saying that there actually is a backlash on women's rights. That was in 2024. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a complex area. I mean, these rights that women have secured over many generations have been hard fought, but we know that when you have to fight hard for things, you sometimes also have to fight hard to keep them too. Now, obviously, I'm really, passionate about making sure that women can play their full contribution. But alongside that, we do need a more equal society overall. And I know that many young men particularly can often feel they don't have the opportunities to get on at work, to take on skilled jobs. And that is a cause for concern as well. And I think that is part of what's driving some of those tensions that we sadly see between generations.
The UK government has pledged to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. It is an ambitious pledge. How will you go about achieving it? What kind of funding do you need for this?
It is an ambitious pledge to halve violence against women and girls. And before I was a Member of Parliament, I managed a women's refuge for women and children that were fleeing abuse. The last Labour government put tremendous support into those services, but we know that over recent years, they've really faced big constraints. But it's also about the police response too, and that's why the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is leading our work around police reform and making sure that, for example, in 999 control rooms, we've got more specialists that are there that are able to respond to cases, because we've seen some utterly tragic incidents where women have lost their lives and where we know that there's more we can do to stop that happening. So it is an ambitious agenda, and it also involves, I think, more education and support for our young people too, so that they understand what healthy relationships look like and that they're in a position to really understand what's going on in teenage relationships as well as later through life.
You've also called for all workplaces to have domestic abuse policies. How can employers and businesses do more to help?
It is important, and often employers, a woman will often talk to a colleague or a line manager when domestic violence is taking place, and that person has got a really important role in providing support and guidance for someone who can often feel very isolated and very vulnerable. Lots of employers already do fantastic work in making sure that small changes might be made or might be necessary in supporting a member of staff who's going through a really difficult time. And that's obviously a good thing to do for the individual who's affected. But actually, I think it's good for the business too, because, we see sadly women dropping out of work in those situations because they just find it too hard to manage. So I think it's good from a business point of view, as well as being, a supportive environment for the woman as well.
Bridget, we've just seen, of course, in the US that the Trump administration ending what has been termed radical and wasteful diversity, equity and inclusion government programmes. Where does the UK government stand on DEI initiatives today and their impact on moving towards equality?
What different countries do is a matter for them. It's, they have their responsibility, and that really is what's right in that context. I mean, here in the UK, I've seen some brilliant examples of where businesses are taking action to support a more diverse workforce, whether that's women, people from different backgrounds, and working class young people as well, because obviously where you're from in terms of your socioeconomic background can be a really big driver of what you can go on to achieve. And businesses do that not because they regard it as just a good thing to do or to look good. They do it because, with some of the big skill shortages that we've got at the moment, if we're not drawing on the full range of talent that's available out there in our country, then businesses are going to continue to struggle to really succeed and to grow. So I've seen some fantastic examples of where businesses are doing it, and they're doing it because there's a solid business case for it.
What about online abuse, misogyny? How do you tackle that?
It's a really challenging area, and I think it's something that many countries are seeking to grapple with. I am particularly worried about what our young people are exposed to online. That's why through the Online Safety Act, there'll be further measures to make sure that children are kept safe from harm. I think part of it has to involve support for children to have the kind of critical thinking skills to challenge what's in front of them, not to take it at face value, because technology is with us, it's not going away, and we need to equip our children to navigate a very different world. But at the same time, clamping down on some of the really unacceptable and dangerous material that can circulate online. And that's what Peter Carl, my colleague in Cabinet, will be driving forward through the Online Safety Act and its provisions.
And what is your message for International Women's Day 2025 and why it's so important to mark it?
It's great to be able to celebrate International Women's Day, to celebrate the amazing successes of women across our country, but it's also a time to reflect on what more we need to do. And that's why the message this year around women's economic empowerment in particular is crucial. It's good for women, but actually at a time when we know we desperately need economic growth as a country. If we can get this right, there can be big rewards for us as a country, but also for business too.
Bridget, if I can just finally ask you, how have you navigated where you've got to where you have today and all the challenges you've faced? And do you still have people judging you for appearance or background?
Women are judged in ways that men aren't, and that's sadly a fact of life, and it's something that I've had to contend with. I recognise that I'm in a very fortunate role now in a leadership position, and I think I have responsibilities to support the next generation of women to come through. But I've also had the benefits of being able to build on the success of so many fantastic women, particularly in politics, who've come before me. Women like Harriet Harman, who were true trailblazers in paving the way for more women's representation. That doesn't just matter in and of itself, because when that happened, it meant that as a country, we started talking a lot more about domestic violence, about childcare, about women's health in a way we just hadn't before. And it's led to really practical action. So my message to women is that it is important that they get involved and make their voices heard. And sometimes as a woman politician, you've just got to have a bit of a thick skin.
Secretary of State for Education and Minister for Women and Equalities, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.